out. When it doesn't work out, it's a different story. But when it works out, holy smokes, does it work out?
Yeah, and there's going to be no messing about here. We're going straight into game 3. Pavel going for his Shaman now, and GeorgeC on his Freeze Mage. So a matchup that's, you know, as the guys did a great explanation of earlier on, Salt and Savitz, with this matchup has flipped to a certain extent, and it used to be terrible for the Mage because of mainly everyone was playing aggro Shaman, and you used Doomhammer to great effect to just pile on so much damage. But now it's much more manageable and kind of GeorgeC's speciality deck to a large extent. So going on to a comfort pick, and I think he's going to be feeling pretty good about the way this one's going to go. Yeah,
definitely in GeorgeC's favor now because of the loss of things like Doomhammer from the Shaman deck. But the Shaman decks have had the addition of Ragnaros to try and salvage this matchup a little bit, and we haven't seen any of the Shamans really been able to use it to their full extent. And
because they've not been balancing it out.
Yeah, they haven't.
That's the trick.
That's the trick. So the Shamans have just felt like too slow to be able to finish the game. They just don't quite get the board built up and able to connect enough damage fast enough. So it's typically going to go in the favor of the Freeze Mage player. But every now and again, Shaman's able to sneak a win out just because.
Just because.
It's Shaman, man. They're able to do incredible things.
When you're on the desk with me, Firebat.
Yeah, Shaman, yeah.
Shaman.
Yeah, Shaman.
Okay, well, looking at GeorgeC's hand, we'll get there one day. Looking at GeorgeC's hand, it is quite well-rounded, I would say, as well. There's a lot of burn/removal he can use. He does have the Blizzard for a little bit later on, and now a Frost Nova as well, combined with the card draw potential from the Acolyte as well. So pretty well-rounded, not really missing out on too much. Does have the Ice Barrier to stall for the secret later on. So
talking about well-rounded hands, though, Pavel's able to go Totem Golem into Manatide Totem, and
it's pretty good curve.
That's about as much heat as you can possibly put on as the mid-range Shaman in the early game. So doing a really good job at pressuring while also refilling his hand and getting closer to that Ragnaros. You're expecting Manatide to continue drawing cards. Azure Drake's going to cycle a card. You're just increasing the % chance that you have that Ragnaros on 8, and when you drop Ragnaros on 8. You got a pretty good shot at actually winning the match.
Yeah, and here's my key question.
Okay.
Is this Manatide worth a Frostbolt this turn? Because it's such a difficult... We've discussed Manatide at length today, and on one hand you have Totem Golem, that's going to keep whacking you in the face for 3, but on the other hand you have a 0/3 minion that it feels awkward to kill because it's not directly damaging you, but it is killing you to a certain extent of just really ramping up the card draw.
I think it is not worth killing. I think it's important to ignore. I think you want to be doing your own game plan as the Freeze Mage. If you're able to line up your freezes, 1 rag shot or even 2 rag shots probably won't even matter if your card draw is able to go as fluidly as, Freeze Mage anticipates their card draw to be able to go. So I think it's very important just to stick to your game plan, and if you can execute your game plan first, you're going to win. So I don't think you even need to respect the Shaman player's game plan very much at all.
Cool, so looks like Pavel is going to clear up the Acolyte. No need to give the Freeze Mage an additional card draw at all, especially he's going to continue to cash in on that Manatide Totem and just get the Drake down as well. The fortunate thing for Pavel here to a certain extent is double Lightning Storm in hand. They would probably like to be at the bottom of the deck if he could choose.
For sure.
And there could be any other 2 cards in the deck as well. But not doing too bad so far. He does have the Thunder Bluff as well for a little bit later on when he's built more of a board and that instant pressure and instant damage, more importantly.
So GeorgeC doesn't have very great options in his hand. You can think about Frost Nova, but I really don't like Frost Novaing. Generally the rule is like anything under about 8 damage isn't worth Frost Novaing. So I'd kind of like to see him just maybe go for the Novice Engineer and the Barrier. You can think about kind of using some of your burn on potentially removing maybe that Totem Golem, and maybe go with like the Roaring Torch plus the Novice Engineer.
Yeah, I think what we're pretty sure of is we're not going to see the Tempo Kobold play. It's not going to be too good against this board at least. It's going to cycle though.
Sure.
Forgotten Torch going to clear up the Totem Golem here. Nothing too flashy, but it's going to help George get towards the card draw he really needs and get the job done in the long run.
Yeah, and I expect, Pavel's just going to be trying to push as much damage as fast as possible. So we do see the Flame Tongue come out, and likely we're going to see the Spirit Claws come out and just ignore the Novice Engineer and just everything swing right at the dome.
Yeah, this is going to be a hell of a lot of damage coming up. Spirit Claws, and the 3 duration, or durability, should I say, on the Spirit Claws is like so crazy. The trade. Yeah. What is he afraid of with the...
Blizzard plus trade-in can kill your Manatide or your Flame Tongue Totem, so I guess that's some sort of concern, but 3 damage is a lot of damage against Freeze Mage.
Yeah, but yeah, as I was saying, the durability on the Spirit Claws is huge. Like 3 is actually such a big number when it can effectively be a 3-swing Fairy War Axe when you've got this kind of guaranteed spell power that Pavel has.
For sure, for sure. The only distinction is the time, because if the Freeze Mage is able to get an Ice Block down, and then you don't pop the Ice Block, and they Alexstrasza you,
you're dead.
You're dead. Yeah, so you're really on a race against the clock, and you're really hoping that Alexstrasza and those Ice Blocks are real buried deep in their deck, and they're unable to kind of make that happen. And for GeorgeC at the moment, that kind of is the case. He's looking at, possibly having to, if he wants to continue cycling, go with like Loot Hoarder Frost Nova, or if he doesn't want to go continue cycling and just get the freeze out, he could go with the clunkier freeze and just drop a Blizzard here. But either way, it's nothing too pretty this turn, and I lean more towards just the Blizzard, but I could understand also going for some other line of play.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind.
Not even going for a freeze on the board. No, that makes a lot of sense, right?
Just yeah, it reduces the damage down by 4 anyway.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, I wouldn't have minded the Blizzard purely because the way I approach his Blizzard is like super awkward to get off on a good turn. So if you just Blizzard on 6, fine, and then that opens up the Frost Nova later on to squeeze in more impactful turns.
The issue with GeorgeC's play here is he left all these totems out on the field going into the turn 7 from Pavel. Perfect turn for him to actually get value out of Thunderbluff Valiant and actually push damage with it. So that could end up kind of hurting him as he is getting towards a really low life total. And now you got to start worrying about, is Rag just going to snipe me and kill me? Like, that's a real thing that can start happening. And you got to worry about lightning bolts as well with double spell power present on the board. If you're not actually clearing the board and you're just freezing it, 5 damage lightning bolts, nothing to joke about. Double lightning bolt plus the Spirit Claws would be lethal.
Yeah, and the fear of this kind of damage coming out from nowhere is actually very real, purely because that Mana Tide has been on the board forever.
That's drawn a lot of cards.
Your opponent's been drawing 2 cards a turn. That's just unfair.
Yeah, it's looking real shaky for GeorgeC. He's not at the prettiest of life totals. Typically speaking, you want to be a little bit higher. You never want to get yourself around that 8 life. That's the scary part. So trying to minimize the amount of damage prior to this to try and make sure you stay at around, like 18-ish is usually pretty good, so they can't just poke you with
the problem is
Spirit
now,
Claws.
GeorgeC's kind of like weighing up Blizzard, but he could have just done that last turn, and then he would have had way more options, or at least more options this turn to work in with a Frost Nova, a second Blizzard even. And yeah, he's been pushed into the Blizzard slightly off curve, and whenever the Freeze Mage can't utilize the whole turn's worth of mana, you're in a bad spot, because you really need to use everything you've got to be able to put together that very specific win condition.
Yeah, it is usually pretty rare that Freeze Mage has to hang a mana. Typically speaking, they plan all their turns out in advance to try and make sure they never hang a mana.
You even see stuff like Coin Ping just to fill out the curve,
every time, usually Freeze Mage. And there's that Ragnaros finally found for Pavel. And he has GeorgeC in a position where he can, pop the block directly out of hand.
And when you draw a million cards a turn, it was only a matter of time to see Ragnaros.
Yeah, and it comes down to that taking extra 4 damage for GeorgeC here, and that's what's going to allow the Ragnaros to be able to get the guaranteed pop. So he's going to go Blizzard and maybe a Loot Hoarder on top of it. He might even think about, Frostbolting the face to stop the Spirit Claws damage coming in. But Lightning Bolt plus Ragnaros is going to end him.
Yeah, this is where Freeze Mage gets extremely difficult to play, and why it's such a sort of high skill cap deck, is that at this point GeorgeC will be thinking exactly what do I need to do and what needs to happen for me to win this game, because I'm in such a rough position. And GeorgeC's proven in the past that he can actually identify those outs very quickly and build his whole game plan around it. But we can see that there's potentially just all the damage in the world available here. It's going to be a guaranteed proc, because he can kill off the Loot Hoarder with the Spirit Claws and with Rag on the board. Plus, the board's full as well. The Thunderbluff's still there to buff the totems.
Now, imagine GeorgeC's 4 health higher here, and the Ice Block doesn't get popped.
And the Rag hits the Loot Hoarder.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Rag hits him in the face, or the Rag hits the 50-50 for the Loot Hoarder. And if it hits the 50-50 for the Loot Hoarder, and GeorgeC's Ice Block doesn't get popped, and he top decks Alexstrasza here, then he has a reasonable chance, and then he would just win the game. So halfway through his deck had about 50% chance to find the Alexstrasza by that point. So.